Live to the internet. Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Livestream, Series 4, Episode 2. Closed captioning today. I don't have a guest and there is no play out. I'm taking these sessions to do some live stuff just to be able to share some of my adventures. And one of the biggest adventure for me during COVID has been the provision of accessibility and how important it is. It's important for me because of the access issues that I have just in terms of the world and dyslexia. So the neurodiversity spectrum that has emerged and really had a lot of discussion and debate during COVID. And people have found each other to have those conversations. But also working with Livestream and working with Zoom and working with online events to make them as accessible as possible. And at the moment, I have found that I am a very reluctant user of Zoom. Not because I like Zoom as the best platform to do that job, but because it provides the functions that I need to be able to provide the best accessibility that I can by default. And that has come through using their closed captioning feature and plugging in Otter. Now, Otter is a service that pre-COVID, I was using that as a transcription service for audio in the room. And I would use that on my phone here. Of course, you know what a phone looks like, but on my phone, and I would have Otter AI open. With the permission of the room, I would then record the meeting as I went along, and it would transcribe it. And that was really useful for me to just have a copy of the text for when I needed it, because one of the aspects of dyslexia that I struggle with is notating at the same time as processing. So if I can separate those processes, it was great. I do use a Livescribe pen, and this was my go-to before I started experimenting with Otter as a way of going more just digital, because the notebook and the pen is really great because I can sit and make notes as you would do, but it also records the audio of the room. And the great thing about the Livescribe book is that when I then tap on the writing that I've made, it would play back the audio from the point at which it's captured on the pen. And that was really useful. So I could make a note, or if I was in a conference and I was looking at a slide, I could just reference the slide, sit back, listen to what the speaker is saying, and then when the next slide comes, I can make a note that the slide had changed. And then when I go back and tap those notations, it will play back what was said when the speaker was talking to that slide. Problem in COVID is that I spent a lot of time with my headphones on, and because it needs the sound in the room, I've not used this very much. So I turned to Otter to see if I could get it to work through the computer. And there's a few problems with getting computer sound to be recognized alongside your microphone source. So a lot of that audio sources combination I found very confusing. I got to some extent away with towards making it work, but nothing that I felt comfortable then being able to use in the background, or it wouldn't work all the time and I wasn't quite sure. So probably 2 months in to COVID, I was visiting Otter to just transcribe an event that I'd got on audio, and I would plug the audio in and it would transcribe it for me. And I noticed that they were connected to Zoom. So I connected into Zoom, and lo and behold, I had closed captions. I did play with rev.com as well, who are another service that do closed captioning into Zoom. But for me, I like to be able to have the transcript. not just the captioning at the bottom, because although that's useful for audience members who need it, that's not the part of the transcription that I find useful. It's the actual transcript that's kept afterwards. So Otter for me. And Zoom, brilliant for that to happen. So at the moment, I'm holding my meetings with people in Zoom for projects, and just automatically in the background, it takes an audio recording and it transcribes for me. So if somebody says something that's real gold dust, I don't have to write it down and try and remember what they said. I can go into the transcript and I can actually clip out what they said and I can put it in the notes. Brilliant. So that kind of accessibility that is always in my mind. Then it came to COVID and providing access for as many audience as possible. And auto-generation captions are good, and they are an option when live transcription isn't possible. So there's just a few little terminologies that I'm just going to clear up for me. So when I start using technology and I'm using technology to achieve a certain aim, if it hasn't been done before, isn't endemic within a conversation, often people have different ways of referring to things. So I find that it's really key early on for me to establish what it is that I mean. If then what I mean has different meanings to people, we can have that conversation. So gradually we get the same lexicon. So here we have auto-generating versus live transcription for subtitles. So over the last year, there's been the notion of subtitles. We're used to subtitles or seeing them on television when we put subtitling on. And for me, subtitling is the final result on a screen for someone who is deaf or hard of hearing. That is the subtitling. And I found out that in theatre, if you actually have the subtitles on a screen above your head, then they're called surtitles, so above and below. So the titling being above as a surtitle or below as a subtitle. Then there's the transcription. The transcription for me is everything in one document. The transcription that I get out of Otter being a document that I can save, a Word document that has everything in it. If it's live transcription, someone is feeding those lines in, or they are typing it live. The notion of live transcription, that live transcription may produce a subtitle or a surtitle. That's kind of how my logic has been working. And then there's the notion of auto-generating them. So now if you're auto-generating and you're using something like Otter, you are reliant on their algorithm to interpret what the audio is saying, and they extrapolate as it goes along what the sentence might mean. And if you watch them, you can kind of see the cogs whirring of how it's going to work. And you have to be careful if you're going to use an auto-generated. It's great for providing baseline accessibility. If you are going to be doing something that has speech and music and things going on in the background, so if you were watching a film, you might turn on subtitles, and the subtitles that you turn on have been predefined. So if there is a doorbell, it will have the little square brackets and it will say doorbell rings. Or if there's a pause, there'll be music and it might say jingly music. Or it might give the reader an idea of what sound effect is going on. Those kind of nuances you do not get when you are live if you're auto-generating. If you're live transcribing, you get that. And if you have the budget and if you are providing accessibility, I think it's really key to include an element of that in your budgets. So this is a way of rethinking budgeting of events too. Auto-generating will auto-generate. So as we've gone through COVID, at the beginning, it was live transcribing into Zoom. Then Otter provided this plugin that allowed auto-generating subtitles. And I've been looking at all of the platforms that I use and saying, okay, as an actual low entry as an entry benchmark of whether I can use this platform as an events coordinator, what is it that I need from a platform? Because there are so many out there. And Zoom is that foundation for me. There's loads of things about Zoom that drive me crazy, and there's things that change every week, and that is a completely different video. But I've mastered it. I can use it for what I need. I have a problem with Zoom's moderation features, because prior to COVID, I would have used Crowdcast for a lot of the things. So at the beginning of COVID, when I did the general secretary hustings for equity, we used Crowdcast. Crowdcast had the main audience in it. That main audience were able to use the Q&A. They were able to chat, and that was ticketed. We then live streamed that into YouTube. So the YouTube audience got to watch, but unless you were in the Crowdcast audience, you wouldn't have the capacity to post questions. And those two different audiences were really key. However, Crowdcast does not have closed captioning. And as that is my entry benchmark, I have not been able to recommend that I use Crowdcast to people who have approached me to do conferences and events. They've mentioned Crowdcast. It always gets entered into the conversation. But unfortunately, as much as I loathe Zoom, I see it as a responsibility to an audience, as an audience advocate, to provide as much accessibility by default as possible. Nobody should have to ask to access, not at that simple level. So I kind of wanted to have audiences is important, but I think just like people in business say cash is king and all that sort of thing, for me, audience is absolute for events. It doesn't matter whether I'm using Crowdcast or whether here I'm using StreamYard. There has to be a point that your audience is watching that you have to think about what their experience is. And whether you are focused on the technical delivery, which is where things like OBS and StreamYard come in, and the switcher systems where you can do fancy things on screen, what the experiences of the audience, I think, should be paramount. And if you can get that right, you get good content, good audio. Having your logo and having your lower thirds and all those kinds of bits and people coming in and out are the nice to haves for me. And for me, because I love to do events, that technical bit is the point at which I get someone to pay more money for the project, and I bring in a technical team who will do that stuff to facilitate me to be able to then look after the audience. So audience is absolute for me. In all conversations, when people say, what about this platform? What about that platform? Oh, why don't you use this? And why don't you use that? For me, a lot of the times, it's because of the audience experience. So closed captioning with Otter AI, really great. If you're using the Zoom app, it just plugs in. If you are hosting, you get that option and people can turn that on and off from Zoom. I have been talking to SpotMe. I've had exchanges with conf.co. I've had exchanges with Hopin about this provision, because until those are provided at a basic, the next hurdle then becomes the cost of those platforms. That's a different conversation. But for me, once closed captioning can be addressed, next will come the ability to pin BSL or sign language interpreters and being able to give them the visual access, and also what can be done to provide audio description access. So just providing closed captions isn't going to stop me championing the access to people's events that they bring me on to host. But the exciting thing, and the reason why this entire live stream is about closed captioning, is because I was pointed in the direction of something that is quite game-changing in terms of audience engagement on a basic level. Please don't think platforms, you are going to get away with not providing access for live transcription. Live transcription should always be something that developers aim to integrate to allow nuanced live transcription, live subtitles. But if you want to do auto-generated for any video platform, you can now do this. And thank you, Tim Patton, for pointing me in the direction of this. You can do closed captioning within within Google's Chrome browser. And that will annoy me. So whilst I am here, and the great thing about StreamYard is these lower thirds, I have a little bit of control. So I can actually edit that lower third in real time, save it, and put it back on screen. Closed captioning within Google's Chrome browser is now possible. And this, because the audience is absolute notion, the way this gives me the option to invite people to maybe use other platforms. And as a result of not using a lot of those other platforms, I'm going to have to refamiliarize myself with how far they've come during COVID. I've been looking at closed captioning, and because none of them have been able to offer that, I've purposely left them to one side, because as much as I love Crowdcast, it was a deal breaker. It was a massive deal breaker. And I do have members of committees that I run and groups and working parties that I'm part of that do have accessibility needs. And it's very hard when you need that access to constantly ask for that access. So for me, because I don't need them, I kind of see that I really want to champion them. So I can invite them to my events and they won't have to say, but can I really get something out of it? Because if it doesn't have closed captions, but if it always has closed captions, that part of an audience, all of a sudden the doors are open for them. And they know that if they come to an event that I am part of, they will have that inherent accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing. So, but yes, you will be thinking, how does this work? And I've tried it. And what I want to do today, because I am trying to do a few more bits with just provide the closed captioning is great, but it's also the lower thirds that I've got here in StreamYard. It's lovely. And I can also do overlays, and I can do backgrounds, and I can play in videos, and I can have up to 10 people in a waiting room and have up to 6 people. I think it might even go up to 8 now if you've got the higher pro package on screen. And I really love that studio experience. So watching here today, I've got, we're going to YouTube. So hello, if you're watching from YouTube, please do like and subscribe. And if you want to put a comment in to say that you watched it live, please do that. It's also live streaming to Periscope for the amount of time that it lasts. And that is going into Twitter. So if you watch this on the Twitter feed, this service, Google's Chrome accessibility, it will provide closed captioning within videos that play within a Twitter stream. I've seen it working. I love it. So likewise, if you're watching this on Twitter, at PCM Creative, do give it a like, do retweet it, and do let me know that you've seen it. And then finally, it's going to my Facebook page. And again, if you're watching on the Facebook page, do put a comment in there, do like it. But it will be closed captioning those locations if you've got the Chrome browser running and you have it turned on. So what I'm going to do, I will turn that off. I'm going to show you where you find that setting. So I'm going to do screen share from here, and I'm going to do I will show you. Yes, I love Skitch. Skitch is a screen grab. So I can, well, you can see it on here. I've got at the top here, it says screen snap. So if I was to click that, it would start enabling me to screen grab on the top browser window, the top window that it would come to first. So you have to make sure that the window that you want to click from is actually live. Open Skitch, it will let you screen grab. So this I've screen grabbed, and here you can see, let me move it back to a little pointer. So here you can see live caption, and it's in the accessibility. So if you go to the top right-hand corner for your settings for Chrome and go to settings, you then have to go to advanced, and within advanced, there is accessibility. Within accessibility, there is now this function to do live captioning, and you tick it, you toggle it on. You then have to reboot the Chrome browser, and then when it reopens, it will be waiting in the background. I had this, okay, let me stop sharing that now. I had this running in the background yesterday, and I attended a Creative England event on Hopin, and it did indeed pop up by default and captioned it. And I do find it really useful to just see how accurate these are, because if I want to use it, I want to know how well it works. How does it interpret the sentences? The people, how does it swap between people? It doesn't say who the speaker is, it just gives you a thread. And as an example, I've got running on my other machine this YouTube, and it's actually running. So I will, you can see on there, I'm pointing there at the bottom, there's a box of text. I will point, and there's a delay. There we go, I'm pointing. And it's transcribing. And the great thing about doing this for live streaming is because you cannot live stream. You can't do auto generation on YouTube live streams unless you've got over 1,000 subscribers. So now that you can. So what does this mean? I've shown you how it works. Do go and turn it on. Just leave it running in the background, and it is something that you need to engage your audience with. So how do you use this? Whatever platform you're, how do you use this? Well, first of all, you have to remember that anybody who is likely to want to use this and who is deaf and hard of hearing won't hear you give the instructions of how to use it. So making a video that you can play at the beginning of your events, or making a video that you can send with the intro pack, with a PDF sheet or with a page in your program that lets people know that if you are doing an event through a browser-based platform, so this is Hopin or Crowdcast or Whereby, Conf, SpotMe, it should work if you are in a Chrome browser window. How awesome is that? So that is a game changer for me, because the audience are the key people that I'm connecting with when I do events. I will put on my Eventbrite ticketing extra questions, and those questions often include: do you require closed captioning, BSL, audio description? And if from the audience signing up they say yes, I will either look at the budget to provide that, and if I don't need it, I can save on that budget in that contingency. Or, especially for BSL interpreters, often those that use BSL will know BSL interpreters, and they will probably have their favored ones. So being able to go to them and say, how much will it cost for you to invite your favored BSL interpreter? That for me gives them a much better experience than me just putting one on screen. There's also nuances in having BSL. There tends to be 2 if it's a long event, so that they can swap between sessions, or you might have them doing different speakers. It's where Zoom has an interesting feature as well, because of course you can do the pinning. So there's going to be a whole raft of accessibility requirements to make me leave Zoom for these other platforms, especially if someone asks me for interpretation. Now, just as an example of how the moment I've accommodated full access, just before Christmas, I did a live screened play with Not Now Collective, and they had 3 screenings. They ran simultaneously. There was one screening that was unsupported that had auto-generated captions. There was a second Zoom screening running which had baked in pre-transcribed spot-on captions that was running. There was also another one that was audio description, because audio description takes things into a different time scale, because at the beginning you have maybe 15 minutes of audio notes describing what the set looks like, describing costumes, giving a sense of evoking what is going to be seen on screen. So giving you all that vision. It's beautiful to listen to. If you ever get a chance, do turn on audio description. Netflix has it, and BBC iPlayer has it on lots of programs to listen in, because the way that they describe and allow the actual text, the spoken script to come across is it's beautiful. I mean, their vocal choreography is amazing. So I highly recommend you try and listen to that. But that's important for me to have that as a whole holistic part of an event. And that's my aim, is to be able to offer that as standard, so that anybody who has those requirements can participate in the content. So really key. So that is really game changing for me. So I've got other thing I love about StreamYard is being able to bring in some feeds. So I've got a couple of comments from the YouTube and from Facebook. So Luke, hi. It does look fab. Accuracy of captioning. This is where having it running during rehearsals is really important, because there'll be some words that it struggles with. During the Spark Festival, we had a children's performance, which was screen filming. Then we had a live party for the children. And it was called Potato Needs a Bath. And unfortunately, the auto-generated captions would constantly say, Pedo needs a bath. Slightly problematic. So for the screening, we actually had the captions baked into the film. We decided that we weren't going to have them turn on and off. They were just going to be there. When it came to the live part of the party, we did then swap over to the auto-generated because it wasn't, the context tended to be potato, and the sentence that it was in, it seemed to be okay after that. So you do have to watch them through. I did a series of festivals at the beginning that needed to have YouTube captioning. And so the question is, can you just let YouTube live caption, or do you need to do an SRT file and upload it? So I got the producers to actually upload to YouTube, watch their piece through with auto-generated captions, and make an assessment about how accurate they were. And if they were good enough, they didn't have to do a CRT file. If they did need to do a CRT file, they could then do it. So you can make that decision. I'm just going to bring up another one from Facebook. Hi, John. Almost local. Can't stay long. I would love to discuss further to access and how to make work cost effective for the Beeston Film Festival. Definitely. Again, it's about setting up the expectation for the audience. The other thing I like to do for events is have a help desk, and that help desk tends to be on Whereby. The reason for Whereby? Just easy access, click and connect. I can give them a bit.ly link. It can be on a button, in a program, in a PDF. They can click on it. I can have somebody sat on a whereby group. They come in, they tell people what the problem is, and you can sort it out. So now I can have closed captions in my help desk. I'm really looking forward to it. So, and then on YouTube, I'm so pleased that I've got Mike has helped me kind of play with some of this in the background today during Tuttle, and live captioning is working better here in YouTube. So yes, it does need a little bit of time to settle down. And I think also when you swap between audio sources, so if two people are talking, it sometimes misses off the beginning of the next audio stream. So it's not perfect, but it's a courtesy to people who find this thing necessary. I find that I hadn't used captions very much before. I know my in-laws often have them running on the TV because they find they can have the volume slightly lower and they can still hear, they can make out all the words. I started using them for YouTube videos because about November time, I got really bad tinnitus for the very first time, and I've had to stay off headphones as much as possible. And I have found myself swapping to closed captions for things like crafting videos where I want to know the instructions for doing the crochet, but I don't want their little fiddly music that's in the background that loops and loops and loops. So often I'll go on to closed captions. I also attended a Creative England session that was about the BBC Creative in Quarantine, and there was a film that was produced that was all sign language. It was acted by actors whose first language was BSL, deaf filmmaker. And when we were watching it, it suddenly dawned on me that I don't know what they're saying. And I thought, can I do closed captions? So I used the closed captions, which gave me the English for British Sign Language that they had put in. And for the first time, I think I realized just how monumental that piece of access actually is to give people context. It gives them the textural noise. So using them myself, and I think if you're going to offer closed captions and accessibility, make sure that you have a friends of your company where you actually engage the people who use these accessibility and find out what tools they're using. Someone in my online branch committee has sight issues, and I was using Google Docs, but actually for her, a Word doc works much better with the screen reader that she uses. So to start accommodating accessibility, when I send out newsletters now, I try and do them in a PDF version, which is fixed formatting, because I just love the fact that PDFs keep it fixed. So once I've designed it and I save it, PDF will look as it does. If I do a Word document, it will often change the formatting, and the thought that someone is not going to see my precise formatting kind of irks my kind of perfectionism a little bit. But providing a Word document for the feature and functionality of being able to use it in a screen reader, absolutely. I don't care what the document does to the formatting, as long as I've done it properly so the screen reader works, that's fine by me. I can let the perfectionism slip. The final one, if I'm going to do that access, is thinking about audio description and blind and partially sighted. And for that, I do straight reading of the newsletter. I'm not a voiceover artist. I'm also not quite sure how you interpret some things with reading. So when it comes to a link, I tend to say, click the link below. Hopefully they're able to navigate to that link. So I've still got lots of things to learn about the best way of doing voiced access. But that's why using professionals to do these things is really important. So that, I'm just going to come back to my little banners. So yes, do like and subscribe anywhere around here. If you want to get in touch with me to talk about closed captioning for your events, or talk about how you can make your events as accessible as possible for arts budgets. I say arts budgets rather than cheap, because cheap is not something that you should ever aspire to. Providing adequate access really needs to be something that is included in your budget. And also within your budget, bear in mind that things take a little bit longer. You need to do the voice recording. So if you do a newsletter and you're going to ask your newsletter creator to create a read version of it, you're going to have to give them time to do that. Just PDF, MP3. I record mine in not iTunes, QuickTime, using the audio thing, just using the tools that I have. So yes, do get in touch with me, productionoffice@pcmprojects.co.uk. And as part of 2021, I don't have New Year's resolutions. I have watchwords. And my watchword for 2021 is mindfulness. And part of that, I've started to do some writing. And I thought, well, why don't I put it on my blog? So I've been daily blogging pretty much since the end of December. I've missed a few days, but I'm not being harsh and punishing myself for that. But please do go and check out my daily blog on pcmcreative.typepad.com. And that, I think, is the stream for today. I'm just going to go through the comments and just check that I haven't got something I need to respond to, because I'm not quite in the audience engagement part of this. There's the process and the workflow of me just doing these series of 6 live streams is as important as if anybody watches. So I love the fact that I've got a couple of comments, and thank you for watching, and thank you for liking, and thank you for subscribing. But ultimately, this is about my practice as a media maker. I've got my lower thirds. Let's see, I can put a logo in the corner here. I can do overlays. I can do all these things. But the main thing is that I'm able to generate content, and I'm able to have the media file at the end that I can use to share, especially when they're projects that I'm doing. So thank you, Mike, for logging in through YouTube. Yes, you can drag the box around as well. So if there's lots of people at the bottom, you can put it at the side, or you can move the box around for the script, for the titles. Yeah, I really like that too. And yes, translucent. So you can set that as well. There's some settings in Chrome that you can play with how you want them to look. You can increase the size. Bear in mind that it is a Chrome function that works through the browser. So it has to be a browser-based service. So it doesn't work through the Zoom app if it opens up into the app. So actually, one thing that I'm going to put in here quickly is, if you want to use this in Zoom, you need to make sure that in the settings, in Meetings Advanced, you have access via browser enabled. And then when people come and log in, they can either open the app, or there is, if you're having difficulties, use the browser. That's the bit you have to use for Zoom if you want people to have auto-generated closed captioning using Zoom, if you aren't using Otter or one of the plugin services. So yeah, it's certainly better than nothing. Absolutely, Mike, it is. So to close this stream down, I would like to just play with a couple of the other bits that are here, because in the branding area of this, I can bring up overlays. So that I don't figure out with that one. So on the overlays that I can do, got to sort out the sizing, but I can do a this. Yes, I can do my little fingers at the top. I've got to get the sizes right. But just before I go, I just want to let you all know about a series of 6 screen share watches that I'm doing in Zoom. These are, you can register on Zoom to join me. So it's the equivalent of coming to my house and watching the telly with me. And I am really looking forward to screening these 6 documentaries by Adam Curtis. Let me take that back off, I'm here. And they're going to be run on Mondays over 6 weeks. So there you can see there's the 29th of March, 5th of April, 12th of April, 19th of April, 26th of April, and the 3rd of May. And they are going to be on Mondays, and they will start at 5 o'clock. 5 minutes to let everybody arrive. I'm hoping there's going to be about 5 to 10 people around, so it's not a big thing. So do join me if you would like to. 5 minutes for everybody to get in, and then I will screen share from the BBC iPlayer. Using BBC iPlayer because of the closed captioning and because of audio description. So you'd have to watch in a separate browser window and turn those things on, but you can use all of BBC iPlayer's features. Monday's episode lasts 70 minutes, so it will take us just over the hour. So at 6:15, when it's over, we'll probably have half an hour to just decompress and just talk over just a few of the things that are in there, because they are incredible. Really informative and reflective on the world that we inhabit and the history that has been made just behind us. I mean, you know, what is in history books and what I learnt in history at school, there's a lot of history that's happened since, and a lot of history that has been documented more. And I'm just I just have huge admiration for Adam Curtis as a documentary maker. So there it is on screen again. An Emotional History of the Modern World by Adam Curtis. Can't get you out of my head. And its tagline, this is not something I've made up: love, power, money, ghosts of empire, conspiracies, artificial intelligence, and you. So you can register through the Facebook page, PCM Projects. There is a post on my blog that's got all of the access links to the Facebook events, and then it registers for the Zoom. So do come and join me for that from Monday. You don't have to come for the actual screening. You can turn up 10 minutes before the end and just stay for the chat. That's perfectly acceptable. But thank you very much for watching. Do get in touch if you want to talk any further about these bits and pieces, or if you'd like me to do a workshop, or if you'd like me to do another stream on this. I have no idea what next Friday's stream is going to be. It will all depend what the world brings me. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.